first, Labor leader Bill Shorten today unveiled his big new scheme to stop global warming, to stop the planet from frying.
We will take action on climate change, real action on climate change, because it's vital not only for our economy, it's fair for our kids in the future.
And aren't you glad it's doing something? Or are you angry at being taken for a fool? You see, here is Bill Shorten's big aim.
It is 50% renewable energy by 2030. It is cutting pollution by 45% by 2030. Cutting power bills by hundreds of dollars a year.
Hold up, let's first nail the deceit there, not just the money side, save you. The word pollution there. This scheme is not about tackling pollution, you know, dirt in the air, smog, that kind of stuff. It's meant instead to cut emissions of carbon dioxide, which is that invisible gas that you breathe out, that, or which you get from burning coal for electricity. Now, that's a gas that plants actually use for food, but which global warming scientists claim is heating the world dangerously. Now, cutting 45% of all those emissions from power stations, from cars, from trucks, from agriculture, all that is going to cost a fortune. In fact, Bill Shorten today mentioned the terrible costs we've already had to pay after closing and even blowing up 9 coal-fired power stations in just 8 years.
Electricity prices have increased by nearly 19% in the last 3 years alone. That's 3 times faster than wages growth. In Sydney, they've gone up 26%.
So you may think, whoa, a political leader would say, back up, back up. Instead, Shorten wants to go in even harder and faster because he seems to think that little Australia can stop the world from heating.
There is not another month, not another minute to waste. Our nation simply needs to get moving on the question of energy and climate.
But there's another deceit, because in fact, nothing Australia does can make a difference to the climate. We're just too small. We're responsible for just 1.3% of the world's emissions. Hear it from the chief scientist.
If we reduce the world's carbon emissions by 1.3%, what impact would that have on the changing climate of the world?
Virtually nothing.
And here comes another fraud. Labor says renewable energy, now mainly wind and solar, no one's going to build any more dams for hydro, that is the cheapest power going. But if that were true, why did Bill Shorten today need to promise billions and billions of dollars of more spending to make you use more of this cheap power?
We will use a range of tools to invest in projects and underwrite contracts for clean power generation, as well as firming technologies like storage and gas. These mechanisms could include concessional loans, equity, and contract for difference auction schemes that are used in other jurisdictions. We will turbocharge the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, doubling its original capital with an additional $10 billion over 5 years.
And still, Shorten hadn't stopped promising yet more money that he's actually going to have to borrow with the government deep in deficit and debt.
We are going to commit $100 million to create a community power network and 10 community power hubs around Australia to provide legal and technical advice as well as start-up funding for local renewable projects.
I've got bad news for you. Even that is not the end of all the spending he had to promise for this new global warming scheme to save the world from global warming. There's billions more to come also to link up all these wind and solar farms around the country and shift electricity around when some state runs out of power.
The Labor government will set a national target of 1 million new household battery storage systems by 2025. The Smart Energy Council estimates that household batteries would enable most homes to save over 60% of their bill.
Batteries, eh? Now, the good thing, I guess, is that Labor has given up on its old dream of a carbon tax. I notice the public won't put up with all that nonsense again. But all this spending will have to be paid for, and by higher taxes. That burden is the new carbon tax. And Labor knows this stuff is dodgy. That's why it wanted to blind voters with that big giveaway, those government-subsidised batteries to back up those subsidised solar panels on your roof.
We will provide a $2,000 rebate for 100,000 battery installations in households with an income of less than $180,000.
Wow-ee. Now, the Prime Minister today was having fun linking that to the last time a Labor government at that, put stuff in or on your roof, which was, of course, the Rudd government's disastrous pink bat scheme that burned down homes and killed 4 installers.
If you couldn't trust them to put pink bats in your own roof without it setting on fire, I wouldn't be trusting Bill Shorten to put a pink battery in your house either.
You know, all this strikes me as just so insane. Almost nobody calls it out. I mean, what's it all to stop exactly? Dangerous global warming? In fact, we've had almost none of the predicted warming so far this century. And the warming that we did see last century has turned out pretty good for us. We've actually had fewer cyclones, for instance, here and around the world, and we've had record grain crops here and around the world as well. So, what does Bill Shorten's big global warming scheme amount to? This. Labor is spending billions of dollars it doesn't have on a fix that wouldn't work for a catastrophe that doesn't exist.